Brittanee Drexel entered the world on October 7, 1991, in Rochester, New York. She was born to teenage parents, John Kayoglu and Dawn. The relationship didn't last, and before Brittanee was even born, the couple separated. Dawn later met and married Chad Drexel, a U.S. Navy veteran who not only became her husband, but legally adopted Brittanee, raising her as his own daughter. Together, Dawn and Chad built their life in Chile, a suburb of Rochester, where Brittanee grew up alongside her younger siblings, Marissa and Camden. From childhood, Brittanee stood out. She had energy, charisma, and a determination that showed in everything she did. On the soccer field and track, her speed set her apart, often leaving competitors trailing behind. Yet she wasn't only defined by athletics. Her appearance mattered to her too. Hairstyled, nails polished, she projected confidence and poise. Teachers and peers described her as someone who could do it all, balancing competitiveness with charm. But behind her striking blue sapphire eyes, made distinctive by a rare eye condition that left her blind in her right eye, there were deeper struggles. Brittanee endured multiple surgeries as a child, and the contact lenses she wore gave her gaze a unique, unforgettable sparkle. Still, as adolescence came, pressures mounted. By 2009, her parents' divorce had shaken her sense of security. Emotional turmoil followed. Twice, she ingested her mother's medication in what doctors later assessed as cries for help, not true suicide attempts. Brittanee was a young woman searching for stability, caught between the turbulence of family change and the universal teenage desire for independence. This tension would set the stage for choices that carried life-altering consequences. In April of 2009, 17-year-old Brittanee Drexel asked her mother, Dawn, for permission to join her boyfriend and several older friends on a spring break trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Dawn immediately said no. The thought of her daughter traveling hundreds of miles away, surrounded by strangers and without adult supervision, was unacceptable. She trusted Brittanee, but she did not trust the situation. But Brittanee, like many teenagers, was determined. She crafted another plan. She told her mother she would instead spend a few days at a friend's house in Rochester. To make it convincing, she had a friend impersonate a parent over the phone. Believing the cover story, Dawn reluctantly agreed. What she didn't know was that Brittanee had already set her sights on South Carolina. Her boyfriend, John Greco, couldn't make the trip due to work. Still, Brittanee traveled with friends and checked into the Bar Harbor Hotel in Myrtle Beach. Soon after arriving, she called her mother, casually mentioning that she was at the beach. Dawn assumed she meant Lake Ontario, a short drive from home. She had no idea her daughter was already 800 miles away. At first, the trip offered excitement, but Brittanee quickly grew disillusioned. The older group partied hard. Alcohol, drugs, non-stop nightlife. It wasn't her scene. She preferred quiet walks or long text exchanges with John, who remained her anchor back home. On the night of April 25th at around 8 p.m., Brittanee walked to the Blue Water Resort to visit longtime friend Peter Brozowitz. Cameras recorded her entering, then leaving at 8:45. She wore flip-flops, shorts, a black and white tank top, and carried a beige purse. Half an hour later, her texts to John abruptly stopped. When John's calls went unanswered, he alerted Dawn. For the first time, her mother learned the truth. Brittanee was in Myrtle Beach. When Dawn Drexel learned that her daughter was not in Rochester, but in Myrtle Beach, fear overtook her. Brittanee had lied to get there, and now she wasn't answering her phone. The distance between them, hundreds of miles, made the panic sharper. Dawn couldn't even file a missing person report herself. She needed a family friend already in South Carolina to walk into the Myrtle Beach police station and report Brittanee missing. Police acted quickly. A 17-year-old girl with a history of emotional struggles was gone, and the circumstances were troubling. Their first stop was her room at the Bar Harbor Hotel. Inside, everything was in place, clothes folded neatly, suitcase untouched. What was missing, however, were her purse and her phone. To detectives, it looked like she had stepped out briefly and never returned. Surveillance cameras gave them a timeline. At 8:45 p.m. on April 25th, Brittanee was seen leaving the Blue Water Resort after visiting a friend. She was supposed to walk back and return a borrowed pair of shorts, but she vanished along that short stretch of road. No camera ever captured her again. Investigators theorized she may have entered a vehicle, whether willingly or by force. Attention soon turned to Peter Brozowitz and his friends, the last people confirmed to have seen her. Their sudden decision to leave Myrtle Beach the next morning raised suspicion. They even left behind clothing and a hotel deposit. Brozowitz hired an attorney immediately, which fueled public doubt. But records of their communication with hotel staff, along with his cooperation, convinced police to clear him. Cell phone data gave the next chilling clue. Brittanee's phone pinged steadily southward until it stopped near the Georgetown-Charleston County line, 50 to 60 miles away. Despite extensive searches along U.S. Route 17 and nearby swamps, nothing was found. National media seized on the story. Rumors of trafficking and abduction spread. Desperate for answers, Dawn relocated permanently to South Carolina, determined to stay close to the investigation. But despite all efforts, the case went cold. Leads surfaced and evaporated. Brittanee was simply gone. 7 years passed without answers. Then, in 2016, the FBI made a stunning announcement. They now believed Brittanee Drexel had been abducted, held for several days, and murdered. To push the investigation forward, they offered a $25,000 reward for information. The declaration reignited public interest, and it opened the door to a new and deeply controversial theory. A prison inmate named Taquan Brown stepped forward. He claimed that, in the days following Brittanee's disappearance, he had walked into a stash house in McClellanville, South Carolina. Inside, he said, he saw Brittanee surrounded by men, including 16-year-old Timothy Deshawn Taylor. Brown described a horrifying scene. Brittanee trying to escape, being pistol-whipped, and later hearing gunshots as he left the property. He alleged that her body was carried out, wrapped, and dumped into an alligator pit. With that testimony, Taylor became the focus. Though his only criminal record was acting as a getaway driver in a 2011 armed robbery, charges he had already served, the FBI used federal authority to pursue him again. To many, it looked less like justice and more like coercion. Was the government pressuring him to confess to a crime they couldn't otherwise solve? Brown's account quickly began to unravel. He changed his timeline, later claiming he had seen Brittanee alive weeks after her disappearance. Another inmate came forward, offering partial corroboration, but neither man produced a single piece of evidence. Meanwhile, the fallout for the Taylor family was devastating. Jobs lost, reputations destroyed, and constant harassment from a community convinced of their guilt. Timothy himself passed multiple polygraph tests, yet FBI agents told his family he had failed. The pressure became so overwhelming that at one point, he and his father considered falsely confessing just to end the torment. Searches of stash houses and alligator pits turned up nothing. In time, the allegations collapsed, but the damage was done. The Taylors were vilified, the community divided, and the case no closer to resolution. It was a sobering reminder of the dangers of relying on incentivized jailhouse informants and the desperation of an investigation running out of leads. By the early 2020s, the investigation into Brittanee Drexel's disappearance was approaching its 13th year. For more than a decade, tips had gone cold, suspects had been cleared, and rumors had overshadowed facts. But technology had advanced. With new cell phone tracking methods, investigators were able to reanalyze Brittanee's phone records. The refined data narrowed both the time window and the precise geographic range of her disappearance. For the first time, the digital trail gave them a sharper map of where she likely was and who else might have been there. That new focus returned attention to Raymond Moody. Moody was a registered sex offender, long known to law enforcement. His record was chilling: a 21-year prison sentence in California for the abduction and rape of an 8-year-old girl. He had moved to South Carolina after his release, living quietly but under the shadow of his past. Back in 2011, a relative had even urged police to investigate him in connection with Brittanee's case. But without evidence, Moody slipped off the radar. Now, with cell tower data placing him near Brittanee's last known movements, the picture sharpened. Investigators also revisited statements from Moody's girlfriend at the time, Angel Vaz. She had acknowledged that his disturbing fantasies and violent tendencies made him capable of such a crime. Still, earlier searches of his property had turned up nothing concrete. Then, in 2022, investigators located Moody's vehicle on traffic camera footage near Ocean Boulevard, the very route Brittanee walked before she vanished. This discovery, paired with his violent history, brought his name back into the center of the case. The turning point came in May 2022. After another search of his property, police confronted Moody, and in a stunning reversal, he confessed. 13 years after Brittanee disappeared, the case finally cracked open. When Raymond Moody finally confessed, investigators and Brittanee Drexel's family were stunned. After 13 years of uncertainty, the man long hidden in plain sight admitted to the crime. His version of events, however, immediately raised doubts. Moody claimed he encountered Brittanee as she walked alone. He said he lured her into his vehicle with the offer of smoking marijuana, then drove her to a secluded campsite. According to him, when Brittanee resisted his advances, he strangled her in a panic. Detectives questioned this account, pointing out its contradictions and the unlikelihood that a cautious 17-year-old would willingly climb into the car of a stranger with his criminal past. The detail that carried weight was his description of the burial site. Moody told investigators precisely where to look, even specifying the depth of the grave and the position of Brittanee's body. Acting on that information, authorities excavated a wooded area near Georgetown, South Carolina, 33 miles from Myrtle Beach. Over the course of May 11th and 12th, 2022, they uncovered skeletal remains. Forensic testing confirmed the heartbreaking truth. They belonged to Brittanee Drexel. She had been buried face down, roughly 4 feet beneath the soil. Forensic evidence confirmed portions of Moody's confession, though serious questions lingered. Did his account downplay premeditation? Was he shielding his then-girlfriend, Angel Vaz, by insisting she was uninvolved? Investigators noted his insistence on her innocence, fueling speculation that he was protecting her role. In October 2022, Moody entered a guilty plea to charges of murder, kidnapping, and first-degree criminal sexual misconduct. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment plus 60 years. At sentencing, he described himself as a monster, an admission that resonated with the devastation he caused. Observers speculated that declining health may have influenced his sudden decision to confess after years of silence. For Brittanee's family, the discovery ended the agonizing uncertainty. But resolution was not peace. The brutality of Moody's actions and the long years it took to uncover the truth left wounds that justice could never truly heal. The conviction of Raymond Moody did not end the story. Its ripple effects reached far beyond a single courtroom. In March 2024, federal authorities turned their attention to his former girlfriend, Angel Vaz. Investigators alleged that she had lied to the FBI, concealing what she knew about Brittanee's abduction and misleading agents during earlier inquiries. 6 months later, in September 2024, Vaz entered a guilty plea. By February 2025, she was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Her punishment underscored a painful truth. Silence and deception had helped shield a predator for more than a decade. At the same time, another legal battle began. For years, the Taylor family had lived under the shadow of false suspicion. Branded guilty by rumor and by the word of unreliable jailhouse informants, they endured harassment, humiliation, and lost livelihoods. In March 2024, Timothy Taylor filed a lawsuit against the FBI. His claim accused the Bureau of misconduct and of recklessly destroying his family's reputation in a desperate search for answers. The case spotlighted the dangers of coercive federal prosecutions and the devastating collateral damage inflicted when investigators pursue weak leads at any cost. For Brittanee's parents, the resolution was bittersweet. Her mother, Dawn, who had long clung to the belief her daughter may have been trafficked, publicly acknowledged the relief of finally knowing the truth. even as it extinguished the last fragile hope that Brittanee might still be alive. Her father, Chad, reflected on years spent searching, distributing flyers, and demanding accountability. Even when those efforts led to painful missteps and wrongful accusations, the Drexel case left lasting lessons. Reliance on incentivized informants delayed justice and harmed the innocent, while a violent predator walked free. Only through technology and persistence did the truth finally emerge. The murder of Brittanee Drexel remains both a tragedy and a warning. At the center is a 17-year-old girl, bright, athletic, full of potential, whose life was taken while she sought nothing more than the independence of a spring break trip. Her disappearance and murder revealed deep flaws in the investigative process. Authorities chased unreliable leads, leaned on incentivized jailhouse informants, and allowed public suspicion to fall on the wrong people. Meanwhile, a known predator with a violent record lived freely, overlooked for years. The Taylor family, uninvolved in Brittanee's fate, endured relentless suspicion, harassment, and the permanent scars of being falsely branded guilty. Their suffering stands as a stark reminder of how quickly an investigation can spiral off course under pressure. When Raymond Moody finally confessed in 2022, the case was solved, but justice came far too late. His conviction brought accountability, but also haunting questions. Why did it take 13 years to connect him definitively? Could earlier scrutiny of his violent history have saved Brittanee, or perhaps prevented other crimes during those years? The delay underscored how dependent law enforcement can be on technology, and how devastating those gaps can become when lives hang in the balance. For the public, Brittanee's case became emblematic of the risks young women face, especially when traveling unsupervised. It underscored the importance of vigilance, the vulnerabilities of teenagers, and the catastrophic consequences of chance encounters with predators. Today, her name resonates in advocacy work around missing persons and violence against women. Brittanee Drexel is remembered not only as a victim, but as a symbol, a reminder of the need for persistence, for accountability, and for justice that does not come too late.